I sacrificed everything to help my husband build his dream tech startup. At his big launch party, he toasted, "Let's thank the real brains, my mentor, not my wife." What happened the next day shattered his illusion of success. It started in the spring of 2011. Seattle rain, always drizzling, wet sidewalks, everyone wearing hoodies like armor. I was 27, scraping by as a freelance UX/UI designer, living in Capitol Hill in a 5th-floor walk-up where the heater only worked if you kicked it twice and offered it a sacrifice. Callum was the friend of a friend at a networking mixer. You know the kind, craft beer, people casually name-dropping VC firms like they weren't all barely affording their cold brew addiction. He had just failed his second startup and had this slightly desperate energy, like a man who refused to admit he was drowning. But he had charm. He talked big, thought bigger, and somehow still made it sound like a shared journey. That night we stood on the sidewalk after everyone left, and he told me, "I just need one person to believe in me. That's all it takes." I believed him. I wish I hadn't. We started seeing each other fast. It wasn't whirlwind romance in the traditional way, there were no weekend getaways or surprise flowers. It was long nights brainstorming in my apartment, him sketching up ideas on my whiteboard while I cooked ramen or picked up freelance work to pay the bills. Still, there was something kind of romantic about dreaming together. Or so I thought. We moved in together 6 months later. He was passionate and obsessive about his big idea, though it changed about 8 times in the first year. Eventually, he landed on productivity software for remote teams, which, in 2011, was just ahead of the curve enough to be intriguing to the right people. I remember being excited. Finally, there was a direction. I built the first UI mockup on my cracked MacBook at 2 a.m. while he was asleep. I still remember the thrill of watching it come together. He loved it, used it in every pitch deck for 2 years. He just never told anyone I made it. He said it would look more professional if he was presented as the sole creator. You know how investors are, he'd say, they get weird if they think your girlfriend is also your designer. I swallowed my pride. Again. For 3 years, we lived off my freelance gigs and his dreams. When we got married in 2013, it was at Discovery Park with cupcakes from a grocery store and a guest list of 14. I didn't care about the details, I believed we were building something bigger. Together. By 2015, Callum incorporated the company. He called it Loopwave, don't ask me what it meant. I didn't understand it either, but I smiled through the announcement email he asked me to proofread. We didn't hire lawyers to help us draft founder agreements. We couldn't afford them. But I kept records of every file I created. Every pitch deck. Every UI element. Every piece of code I contributed. Quietly, methodically. Still, there were no contracts between us. No salary. No founder shares. Just trust. And foolish hope. Things started turning around in 2017. A seed investor from San Francisco took interest. He liked the product, especially the sleek design and smooth onboarding flow, both of which I'd spent months perfecting. He wired $1.5 million to Loopwave. Callum cried. We danced in the kitchen that night, spinning around with leftover Thai food in hand like kids who'd just found a treasure chest. Then things changed. Suddenly, it was Callum's vision and Callum's leadership. He started using the word I more and we less. I was told to stop responding to company emails. He brought in a team. Hired a junior designer. I trained her. She called me Miss, like I was someone's mom hanging around the office too long. Lawrence entered the picture around that time. A retired tech exec with a LinkedIn profile full of keynote speeches and buzzwords. Callum met him at a leadership summit and was instantly enthralled. Lawrence said all the things Callum loved to hear, about scaling and dominating market share and exit strategies. Callum started parroting him. Suddenly, he was wearing blazers to Zoom calls. His language changed. He called me emotional when I pushed back on UI decisions. Said I was too attached to the old versions. I wasn't emotional. I was exhausted. But I kept my head down. Because Loopwave was still ours, right? Right? 2020 arrived, and the company had grown fast. With remote work exploding, Callum secured a contract with a major firm. The launch was scheduled for spring 2021. He rented a rooftop venue near Pike Place Market. Flowers. Live music. Caterers. A photographer walking around taking candid shots. I was running on 4 hours of sleep from tweaking the final UI the night before. I made sure the demo looked perfect. I double-checked every detail. I even picked the napkins. Then came the toast. Callum tapped his glass, thanked his investors, his team, and then he said, but most importantly, the one who made all this possible, my mentor, Lawrence. Cheers. Smiles. Flashbulbs. My stomach dropped. I wasn't mentioned. Not once. I felt like a ghost. I didn't even exist in the world I helped build. But I smiled. Because what he didn't know was that I had spent the last year preparing. I had finally hired my own attorney. Quietly. I had documented everything, from the original designs to timestamps on commits. Even the initial wireframes, dated and signed. And most importantly, I filed a provisional patent under my name, for the unique onboarding process that differentiated Loopwave from competitors. It wasn't just the UI, it was the entire flow. The flow I designed. And he had unknowingly signed a document giving me full legal rights to it, hidden in a packet of routine paperwork I handed him months earlier. He never read anything I gave him. That was his second mistake. The first was underestimating me. He didn't say much on the ride home after the launch party. Maybe he noticed I was quiet. Maybe he was too busy basking in the afterglow of public validation. His phone kept buzzing, congratulatory messages, missed calls from his mother, photos of him and Lawrence with their champagne glasses raised. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, Seattle's lights flickering against the rain-streaked glass. My dress still smelled faintly of the venue's candle wax and overpriced peonies. I didn't speak. I just listened. To the rain. To the silence between us that had grown so familiar it felt like a third passenger. Back home, he opened his laptop immediately. He was uploading photos, tagging people on LinkedIn, captioning it all with "Never Stop Believing." I walked into our room and closed the door. I laid on our bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. And then I allowed myself one single tear. Not because I was sad, but because I knew what was coming. The next morning, while Callum was at a post-launch brunch with his core team, I sent the first email. From my personal account. Subject line, formal notice of intellectual property claim, Loopwave onboarding process. I CC'd my attorney. Attached, a 63-page PDF detailing the UX and onboarding process, documented with dates, designs, screenshots, timestamps, and emails. I sent it to the company's legal rep, their top investor, and, for good measure, Lawrence. Then I went to the dog park. It took about 6 hours for the first phone call to come in. Callum called 3 times. I didn't answer. Then came the investor. Then another. I knew what they were seeing, proof that their founder had built the cornerstone of his product on someone else's work. Work he didn't own. By evening, he came storming into the house. "You sabotaged me," he said, slamming the door. "You think you can just steal my company out from under me?" I didn't get up. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea, my laptop open. "I didn't steal anything," I said, still looking at my screen. "I protected what was mine. You just assumed I wouldn't." "You're my wife," he barked. "Exactly," I said. "I was your wife. Not your employee. Not your shadow." He paced the living room like a man unraveling. "You filed patents behind my back. You blindsided our team." "No," I said. "You ignored the woman who built your product with you." And now the team gets to know who really created what they're selling. He didn't reply. He just stood there, the weight of realization pressing down on him like 100 bricks. And that's when I saw it, the shift in his face. The dawning comprehension that I wasn't just an accessory. I was the engine. Within 72 hours, Loopwave's legal team called an emergency board meeting. Their biggest investor put the funding on pause. The acquisition talks that had been whispered about? Cancelled. Because now, they were dealing with a messy IP battle, one that had legs. I wasn't some bitter ex making noise. I was a legally documented contributor with years of evidence. Screenshots. Email chains. Original drafts. File timestamps. Witnesses. Patent paperwork. Everything. Callum tried to spin it. He went on LinkedIn and posted some vague status about navigating unforeseen challenges with grace. But it didn't help. Because whispers in the startup world spread fast. And nothing spooks money like uncertainty. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet publicly. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. But behind the scenes? I offered to license the onboarding process to a competitor. One that had been circling Loopwave's territory for months, looking for an edge. They were thrilled to take the meeting. My attorney handled everything. Callum didn't know about the deal, yet. At home, things fell into a weird limbo. We still lived together, technically. I worked from the second bedroom. He moped in the kitchen, his laptop untouched more and more. He stopped going into the office. His team was scrambling to figure out what could be salvaged. Word got out that they were retooling the product, removing or altering anything tied to my designs. You can't just gut the foundation of a product and expect it to hold. He started drinking more. Not sloppily, just enough that the fridge was always stocked with craft beer and the trash filled with bottles. He lost weight. The confident blazers were replaced with old hoodies again. Full circle. One night, about 2 weeks into the collapse, he knocked on my door. He didn't come in, just stood there. I didn't know you had that in you, he said quietly. I looked up. That what? A backbone? He gave a half laugh. Not cruel. Just tired. I thought you'd always be there. I was, I replied. Until I wasn't. He didn't respond. Just stood there for a moment, like he wanted to say something else. Maybe apologize. Maybe ask me to stop. Maybe just hear me tell him it was all going to be okay. But I didn't. And he walked away. The following week, the board made their decision. Callum was to step down as CEO. An interim leadership team was brought in. Lawrence resigned for personal reasons. A few engineers jumped ship to other startups. The PR team quietly took down the launch content. The celebratory posts disappeared. The rooftop photos? Gone. Loopwave was still technically alive, but it was no longer his. The irony? The only thing left untouched was the Instagram page I had built for the brand all those years ago. The very first post, buried at the bottom, was a blurry photo of Callum and me at our dining table, whiteboard behind us, and the caption, Late Nights. Big dreams. Let's build something that matters. They never deleted it. They just stopped posting. At home, we barely spoke. The tension was thick but quiet. We ate in silence. Slept in the same house, but in different rooms. I no longer asked where he was going. He no longer asked how my day was. It was like living with a ghost. Or maybe, I was the ghost all along, and he was finally realizing I had been real. He left the house 2 weeks after stepping down from Loopwave. No announcement. No talk. I just came back from the grocery store and his closet was half empty. A few drawers left open, like he couldn't even be bothered to close them. His razor gone from the bathroom. The bottle of shampoo I never liked, also gone. No note. No text. He just disappeared. It wasn't surprising. It was his style, avoidance wrapped in silence, masked as stoicism. He always told me he hated drama. He just never noticed he caused most of it. For a while, the house felt weirdly peaceful. I wasn't waiting for the sound of the front door anymore. I wasn't listening for sighs from the hallway or the microwave door slamming shut. The quiet that used to feel suffocating now felt clean. Spacious. And in that space, I worked. I rebuilt my portfolio. Updated my LinkedIn, made it public again. Started getting messages from former colleagues, clients I'd lost touch with. One of them asked, "Are you the one who designed Loopwave's interface?" Because honestly, it was light years better than what they've got now. I didn't answer directly. I just said, "Yeah, I've been designing for a while." I kept things classy. Private. Focused. But it was surreal, watching people piece it together, slowly realizing that the polished, intuitive, beautiful part of Loopwave hadn't come from Callum or Lawrence or any of the names that made it to TechCrunch. It had come from me. Quietly. Consistently. Invisibly. Until now. Around the same time, Loopwave's investor reached out to my attorney. No threats. No intimidation. Just a clean, simple offer: would I be willing to sell the rights to my onboarding patent? I told them I already had a competing offer. Which was true. But I'd be open to negotiations. The number they offered was higher than I expected. Higher than Loopwave was worth at that point, honestly. They wanted to bury the issue. Clean it up. Salvage what little reputation remained. Having me as an adversary wasn't part of their long-term strategy. I agreed to a licensing deal, not a sale. I wasn't ready to hand anything over permanently. That's how I paid off my half of the mortgage in one day. The divorce papers came in the mail a month later. No surprise there. We had talked about separation once or twice in the early months of 2020, back when I was still clinging to the hope that things could turn around. But neither of us had the energy to follow through. COVID made everything feel uncertain. But now? Everything was very clear. We had a prenup. No contest. No spousal support. No shared business assets, because officially, I was never part of his company. He made sure of that. And that was exactly why he had no claim to mine now. Poetic. I didn't cry when I signed the papers. I just sat at the dining table with the dog curled at my feet, pen in hand, and thought, this is the last piece. Not of heartbreak. Of freedom. He emailed me once after the papers were filed. Just a few lines: "I know I screwed things up. I wish I could say sorry and have that be enough. But I know it's not. I hope someday you can see I really did believe in us." I just got lost. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Belief without action is a paper boat in a storm. Pretty. Pointless. After that, he went dark. I heard through a mutual friend that he was working on another project, something low-key, possibly consulting. No real traction. No investors. I wished him no harm. But I also didn't care. He had erased me for years. Now I'd returned the favor, with receipts. One random morning, I was walking through Pike Place Market, sipping coffee, buying fresh flowers, when I passed a couple arguing softly near the newsstand. The woman was holding a tote bag with the old Loopwave logo on it. I almost laughed. Not because I missed it, but because that bag still used the original design I created. The one Callum said was too minimalist before later pitching it to investors as intentionally clean. I didn't stop walking. Just smiled. Because somehow, that little icon still lived on. Not because of him. Because of me. But the full truth? None of it, happened in a vacuum. There were signs. So many signs. Little moments where I let myself be small. Silent. Complicit. The nights I stayed up working while he slept, thinking this is just the hustle phase. The times he called me emotional in meetings and I nodded along. The times he introduced me as his wife and not his co-founder. The jokes he made, minimizing my work. The eye rolls. The "you're overthinking it." It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. And I let it happen. Until I didn't. My lawyer called a few weeks after the deal closed to congratulate me. I didn't know what to say. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. Quiet. Clean. Heavy. Like dust settling in a room I'd finally stopped trying to decorate. And the funny part? Once I stopped chasing acknowledgement from him, clients, partners, even small startups started noticing me. My work. A founder from Vancouver flew in to meet me for coffee and said, "I've seen what you do with product strategy. We could really use someone like you." He didn't ask if I was available. He asked if I was interested. And that was the first time in a long time I remembered what it felt like to be seen without having to shrink. So I took the meeting. The founder from Vancouver, Ava, was sharp, thoughtful, and didn't talk in buzzwords. She showed me her prototype, walked me through the pain points she wanted to solve, and most importantly, she asked for my opinion. Not my help. Not a favor. Not my silence. When I said I wanted to work remotely and retain creative control, she nodded and said, "That's how it should be." That was the moment I realized I'd been starving for respect. And now, finally, I was sitting at a table where I didn't have to beg for scraps. I signed on as a consulting creative director. 6 months later, I had equity, a real contract, and a product with my name on the design credits. No secrecy. No erasure. And it felt good. Not flashy good. Not revenge fantasy good. Just real. Like I had arrived at something solid that didn't require me to shrink myself or hide behind someone else's spotlight. Callum's name faded from my life the same way old ink fades from paper, slowly, but surely. Loopwave went through 2 more CEOs, then quietly folded 8 months after he stepped down. The brand dissolved. Their site redirected to a "we're transitioning" placeholder for months before finally going dark. A few of their former engineers ended up working at Ava's company. One recognized me in a Zoom call. "You're the one who built the real Loopwave," he said, not even joking. We all knew. No one could say it back then, but we knew. I smiled. Yeah. I was. Then, about a year later, right when I was finally forgetting the shape of Callum's voice, the way he used to say "you worry too much" like it was affection, I got an email. Subject line, "Coffee?" It was from Lawrence. I nearly deleted it. But curiosity made me click. The message was short. "I'd like to apologize in person. I'm in Seattle next week. If you'd consider meeting for a coffee, it's on me, no expectations." Part of me wanted to ignore it. But another part, the one that had grown strong and calm and curious, said, "Go. Let them see who you are now." So I went. We met at a quiet cafe in Ballard, near the water. I wore a simple black coat, no makeup, no armor. Just me. He stood when I walked in. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. I shrugged. Neither was I. He gestured for me to sit. "I'm not here to make excuses," he said. I saw everything unfold from the sidelines and didn't step in. I didn't ask questions I should have. And I regret that. I nodded. "Okay." He looked at me. Really looked. "I've worked with a lot of founders," he said. "But you were never just a co-founder. You were the engine. And I know it now. I think I always knew." That hit harder than I expected. He slid a folded envelope across the table. "It's not money," he said quickly. "It's a letter of acknowledgement. For the record. For you. For anyone you want to show it to. I'm not trying to rewrite history, I'm trying to tell the truth." I took it. I didn't promise anything. I didn't say thank you. But I looked him in the eye and said, it matters that you came. Even if it's late. That night, I opened the letter. It was typed, signed, and specific. It acknowledged my role in creating the product, the company, the vision. It named me directly. I didn't need it anymore. But I kept it. Sometimes, it's not about what you show the world. It's about what the world eventually sees, with or without your permission. The real win didn't come in court. It didn't come in the form of checks or applause or someone groveling. It came quietly. The first time someone asked me to speak at a panel, and introduced me as a founder, not a plus one. The first time a younger woman DM'd me to say, I read your story. It helped me stand up for myself at work. The first time I walked into a room and didn't feel the need to prove I belonged. I had already proved it. To myself. To the people who mattered. And that, more than any takedown, was the real revenge. Callum, wherever he is, probably tells a different version of the story. Maybe he says I turned on him. Maybe he paints me as bitter or difficult or unforgiving. That's fine. People will say what they want to preserve their pride. But deep down, he knows the truth. He knows the moment everything started to fall apart wasn't when I filed the legal claim. It was when he lifted that champagne glass and thanked everyone but the woman who built his dream with him. The next day, he lost his company. But the night before? That's when he lost me. And once I was gone, the rest was just a slow collapse of a house built on borrowed brilliance. I didn't destroy him. He did that on his own. I just made sure he couldn't build another empire on someone else's silence. And that's the kind of ending I can live with. Poetic. Permanent. And entirely mine.